Hi, and welcome to episode 18 of the Trail Encounters. And as we mentioned last time, we are going to talk about numbers today. And if you could take a minute and like and subscribe, we would really appreciate that as well. So, numbers.
Yeah, well, first off, engineer of like numbers, they're very objective. They describe the world in very objective ways, right? So 1 plus 1 is 2. Music can be described by frequencies, which are determined by numbers. If you want to go buy some gasoline for your car, you have to buy so many gallons, which is defined by numbers. So there's so much of our lives are just defined by this objective reality of how we count.
Right, right. And then also one of my favorites is the Fibonacci sequence is found throughout all of nature.
Right.
And the numbers basically, the two numbers preceding add up to the third number and the fourth number and so on. You might want to, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so 1 plus 1 is
2.
2, then 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8. So if you take that sequence and then you graph it by using squares, you get this spiral.
Right.
And that spiral is what's seen throughout nature. So there's this beauty in it, right? This beauty in numbers, beauty in nature that are kind of connected in ways you might not expect.
Right, and I think of it as fingerprints of God too. It's just like you can see Him in everything through that.
And it's helpful, like for guys, our anniversary is coming up tomorrow, by the way. And so instead of buying you flowers this year, I thought I'll just get a card and write down the Fibonacci sequence because it's in flowers anyway.
Oh, is it?
It is, so that would kind of work, right? I'll just write it
that.
36 times over and over again, so you can get it that way.
I would not recommend that to anyone.
So the idea, though, is that numbers are everywhere in our lives, even in the beauty as well. So again, music, like you said, seashells and flowers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the issues with numbers, though, when it comes to the Bible and theology and so forth, is that often people begin to use them in ways that might not be as intended. Especially now. Anytime you have upheaval in the world, you get apocalyptic thought, or people thinking about the end of the world, and doing calculations and using numbers from the Bible to try to calculate, the end of time, the end of days, or other kinds of things like that. If you've seen an episode in The Simpsons called Left Below, which kind of makes fun of the Left Behind series, and does a good job, by the way. But in Left Below, Homer Simpson's gathering numbers from a bunch of old books, and he's adding it up, and he's got, this is the date, the end of the world's going to happen. Okay, it's that kind of stuff. Now, the danger isn't just that. The danger is when you use the numbers of the Bible for something other than how they were intended, what ends up happening is you miss what was intended. Numbers have a level of meaning that are meant to point you to some other reality, but not in a hidden secret kind of way, more of like the Fibonacci flowers kind of way, that it brings a depth of understanding to help you kind of get another point that might not, without having to actually say it out loud, so to speak. Again, not to be hidden, but more to, again, add a depth of understanding or beauty or, those kinds of ideas, not hidden secret kind of idea.
Right. Well, on the trail, I was just recently editing that, and he was talking about the feeding of the 4,000 and the 5,000 and how in one instance they were feeding a group of Jewish people and they collected 12 basketfuls. And that tends to lead to 12
tribes of Israel.
Right? And the second one talked about it was feeding the Gentiles, and they collected 7 baskets after that, which is a number of completion.
Right.
So I think it's pretty interesting how that adds another depth to it, right? That just feeding people and collecting baskets doesn't necessarily mean as much as if it says something else.
Right. So that's in Matthew's gospel, and what's interesting about that one is that Jesus is in Jewish territory, like you said. He feeds 5,000 plus women and children. They collect 12 baskets for the 12 tribes of Israel. They have this incredible story of the Canaanite woman. And then after that, he's in Gentile territory, and he feeds 4,000 plus women and children with 7 baskets left over. And what's interesting is since 7 is the number of completion, it's almost like he starts with the Jewish population, and when the Gentiles are fed, they're kind of brought in, bringing completion to the kingdom. So it's a theological statement. It's just not a number. It's like this theological movement of, for the Jews first, and the Gentiles come in, and the kingdom's kind of complete.
And I love that. I think that it makes the story so much more interesting to me.
And that's where numbers can come in. So we're going to look at a few of the most important numbers in the Bible and give you a sense of what they may have meant and the depth that they may add to your reading of the Bible. That's kind of our intention today. So the first number we're going to look at is the number 40. And we see this number a lot in the Bible. Right from the book of Genesis, how long does it rain on the earth?
40 days.
40 days. So again, the number, some call it a generation, but think of it more of like a complete time spent with God, or a complete event, so to speak. Yeah, 40 years kind of highlights the idea of a lifetime of sorts. We live longer than that, of course, but it gives this idea between generations, sort of, but it's more than that. It's more like this, again, a complete time spent with God. So another one is, how long does Israel spend in the wilderness?
40 years.
40 years. And by the way, in that period of time, those who left Egypt to those who go into the promised land have died, except for Joshua and Caleb.
Right.
So again, a generation of sorts has died in the wilderness with God because of their own lack of faith, sinfulness, and so forth.
Right. Well, and then Jesus fasted for 40 days.
For 40 days and 40 nights, right? When he's led into the wilderness, which, by the way, reflects back on how long Moses spent on Mount Sinai, which is 40 days and 40 nights, and Moses fasted there too. So those two are connected by this idea of 40.
So it kind of brings us where the numbers point us to something else maybe that happened, and just to bring, because people told oral stories back then, so that kind of reflection really helped to tie things together.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, in that instance we just gave, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus is kind of shown as the new Moses, right? So Moses came and delivered the people from slavery. Jesus comes and delivers us from slavery to ourselves, or slavery to sin. So Matthew wants to put kind of Jesus and Moses together and say, like, as was Moses, how much more Jesus?
Right.
And so this 40 days thing is a connection between the two.
And I love that Matthew does that. He does such a masterful job of showing Jesus as the new Moses.
Absolutely. And super, super helpful. Another 40, Jonah goes to Nineveh and preaches to them for 40 days. So another period of time that links to that 40 days.
Right, and then after the resurrection, Jesus was with the disciples for about 40 days as well, right?
Yep, exactly. Again, a period of time they spend with God that kind of ends in this kind of section of time, if you will. You can call it generational, in a sense, like this generation he spends with his disciples for 40 days, sort of like that. But that's the idea. It's this period of time of this special time kind of with God. Just how to look at it that way. So 40, really important number that you'll see, and you'll see it occur again and again and again beyond what we just talked about just now. So just again, think of it as a special time spent with God. Okay, another number is 3. And obviously you have the Trinity. You have a lot of 3s in the Bible. We're not exactly sure why the number 3 was so important, but it's definitely all over the place.
Well, I feel like it always reminds me of the Trinity. That's one big thing. And then one thing that I really thought was interesting is we look at in Genesis, the creation story, we think of that as 7 days, but it's really 2 sets of 3 plus 1. And that, when you look at it that way, and I think we've talked about Genesis before, where how the world, God stopped chaos and then set it into motion how he wanted it. They parallel, and it's really super interesting to me.
Yeah, so you have 3 days have one theme, like you said, stop chaos. 3 days have another theme, you move and how I want you to move. So each set of 3 has a theme. And we'll see this a lot too. So for example, in Amos, you'll see, for 3, yea, 4 will I do so and so, God says. Like 3 plus 1 is another big theme, where it's like, if 3's so much, 4's even more, right? We'll see that kind of play out again and again. Another set of 3's that appears quite a bit is in the miracles of Jesus in Matthew 8 and 9.
Oh, right.
So we have a set of 3 miracles where Jesus breaks boundaries, and then a little break about discipleship. 3 more miracles, a little break about discipleship. 3 more miracles, a little break, plus 1.
Right.
Now that, by the way, that 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 1 mirrors back to, guess who? Moses. Because the works and wonders of Egypt, or the plagues as we call them sometimes, those are sets of 3, 3, 3, and then the Passover. So, and they're, again, very distinct in how they're set up. So you have a set of 3 where Moses, for example, uses his staff, that kind of thing. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 1. And again, these link these things together more of like a depth of understanding, more than like a numerical kind of value.
Right. And if you haven't seen Frank's video series on Matthew, it's really very interesting. And that you can find that on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, it's under classes. So by the way, that one started off as I'll do 10 classes on Matthew, Stacy, during the 2020 timeframe. Ended up being 52. Just FYI, so it's a little long. Another 3 is, of course, the 3 days Jesus spends in the tomb.
Oh, right, right.
Now here again, people get hung up on 3 days.
Right.
Like 72 hours, right? To the minute. Well, no, it really wasn't that. So Friday, Jesus dies prior to sunset. That's
Right.
day 1. So remember, the Jewish days were counted from sunset to sunset. Okay? So that's based on Genesis 1. There's evening and there's morning the first day. So day 1 is Friday. And then at that evening is beginning of Saturday, which is day 2. On Saturday evening is the beginning of day 3, which becomes Sunday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's not 72 hours,
Right.
but that doesn't matter. It's the number 3. It's these 3 days, which also harkens back to our old friend Jonah, who spends 3 days on the wrong side of a fish dinner.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so again, 3 is a very, very important number. We'll see this again occur again and again. So look for the connections to what they're trying to bring out of the number as opposed to the number itself.
Right.
Okay. All right, another one, 7. What's this one mean, Stace?
It's completeness.
Yes, we talked about that one. Yep.
Favorite number.
It's your favorite number, really?
Actually, 4 is, but 7's close second.
For 3, yay, 4. Okay. So yeah, the number 7. And this is, again, the idea of completeness or wholeness. Our week is based on this. God creates in 6 days. On the 7th, he rested, which is interesting because the number 7 doesn't fit into the lunar cycle of, 29 and a half days is the lunar cycle, which a lot of, the Jewish community used to, mark time, or the solar calendar, 365 days. It doesn't fit into either of those two. It's its own thing. Like, it's our reminder that God created in 7 days. He did it. He made it. It is complete in the 7th day. And so we have to work around that. So we have leap years on the solar calendar. On the lunar calendar, you have leap months over a 19-year period. So you've got to make up for those, those off days, if you will, using the number 7 as your week.
Yeah, to keep us in the same context where spring is the same time in summer.
Right, yeah. If you're planting in, let's say, April, that's when you plant. Well, your calendar's moving. It's going to be, December before too long, right? It's all be messed up. So you got to kind of keep correcting that. So the number 7, even we use it as a week, is meant to kind of point us back to the God who created these things.
Right.
And the Sabbath day and those kinds of things. So it does have this idea of completeness. Another example, when Peter goes to Jesus and says, how many times should I forgive somebody?
70 times 7?
Right, 70 times 7. So does that mean that on 491 you can
Yes, that's exactly what it means.
cut them loose? Like, okay, 491 times, I'm kind of done. Well, no, he's like, it's the number of completeness times the number of completeness times 10. Like, it's infinite in that sense.
Yeah.
So 70 times 7, as Jesus is saying, it's this complete sense of these things. And so like in Revelation, we'll see 3 sets of 7. So get that, 3 sets of 7. But 3's got a certain meaning, 7's got another. And in fact, in those 3 sets of 7, you have like 7 bowls, 7 seals, 7 trumpets. In those sets of 7, which repeat, they're almost like cyclical. They're not like one after the other. They kind of recycle if you read them closely. You have a set of 4 and then a set of 3. So the set of 4 is focused on the decreation of the world, which goes back to Genesis 1. And then the set of 3 are like supernatural. So even those are broken down into these kind of number sets. But again, it wasn't that the 7 or the 3 was a hidden number. It's like, no, he's going back and saying, this cycle is complete. This cycle is complete. This cycle is complete. And then uses other numbers to kind of pull in other things. I wrote an article just this past week about this idea of reoccurring symbols in the Bible. It's on Substack. And in it, I reflected back on a TV show we saw a long, long time ago. Actually, 35 years ago.
Is it really 35 years ago?
Yeah, 1991. An episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation came out.
I know you're surprised that he watches that.
Yeah, so yeah, this is old, right? And so, but it sticks with me. And in this episode, Picard and this guy are on this planet, and they're alone, and there's this beast that's after them, and the alien says to Picard, Darmok and Jalad on Tanagra. He says over and over again, and hands him this dagger, and Picard's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I get the words, but what are you talking about? Well, they come to find out that this race, this alien race, only communicates through stories. So what this guy was trying to say is like, hey, you and me, let's go fight that guy. Mm-hmm. Because in the story, Darmok and Jalad were enemies who teamed up to fight this enemy of theirs on Tanagra, this island. But Picard didn't know the story. Right. In the same way, we do the same kind of thing, right?
Well, yeah, we did it with Romeo and Juliet. If you tell somebody Romeo and Juliet on the balcony, it brings up a picture.
Although you can go two ways with that, right? Like Romeo and Juliet on the balcony, it's a very love story, or they actually killed each other, right? Or committed suicide. I'm just kidding. But but the idea is that these stories kind of bring meaning, right? So you can take a shared story or a shared quote. We do this all the time with quotes from movies these days. Mm-hmm. We'll quote Yoda in kind of a weird voice or something like that. I won't do it now, but we'll quote these things and it'll bring in the entire story with it, and that's a really cool thing. Now, in a way, the Bible kind of does that. Sometimes it brings in these numbers and these stories, and it's reaching back to something else, and it's pulling all that stuff in kind of with it. Yeah. In some ways, and so we kind of want to look at numbers in that way too.
I like that.
Okay. So again, 7 completeness. We can go through all the 7s. There's just a ton of them in the Bible. However, I do want to talk about one when it comes to, like we've been talking about, apocalyptic literature and Revelation in particular. So like I already said, there's 3 sets of 7 in the seals, bowls, and trumpets that we'll see. And then again, that breaks down into 4 and 3 and so forth. But there is another set that plays off of 7 that people often miss. Mm-hmm. And that is 3.5, 42, and 1260. So, for example, in Daniel 7, it's in Daniel 2, Daniel 7 verse 25, it says, and they shall be given into the power for a time, 2 times, and half of time. So you add that up and you get 3.5. In Revelation 13:5 it says, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. And then Revelation 11:3 says, and thou wilt grant my 2 witnesses authority to prophesy for 1,260 days wearing sackcloth. So you have time, 2 times, half a time, that's 3.5. 42 months.
So a time is 1.
1, yeah, right. Okay. So a time, 2 times, and half a time, 3.5. Okay, is that 3.5? 3.5, okay. And then you have 42 months, and then 1,260 days. All of those are 3.5.
Right.
Okay, so 42 months is 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. 260 days is 3.5 years, right? Time, 2 times and half time, 3.5 years. So it's half of 7. So it's not like a set of numbers where we're trying to find out what 42 means and where do I start counting from 42 or 1,260 days. And it's not that. It's like, what does 3.5 represent? It's half of 7. What does half of 7 mean to anybody? Why would that matter? That's your question you want to be asking. Mm-hmm. So I had a revelation about this number with you.
Yes, I remember well.
When our first child was born, we were in Atlanta. So we were at Northside Hospital, and Stacy's in there. She's like all hooked up to all this stuff. It's all new to us, I mean, we haven't. So she's all hooked up to machines, and there's this strip chart there that measures contractions. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't have a numerical value. It doesn't say like 1 to 10. It's just a strip chart. And I'm like wondering like how this thing works. Engineer. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at it, so I'm kind of trying to correlate between the strip chart and her pain level. So that'd be interesting. So I'm asking her, is this hurting now? How about now? Is it getting worse? I've learned.
You think he'd figured out by the level of, tears coming out.
Yeah. And, well, at one point she was quite clear. in saying to me that this was not helpful. She didn't say it like that. But so I learned something that day. The best way to handle that strip chart is when it gets to the peak, when it gets to the worst spot, don't say a word on the way up. Like on the way up, don't say anything. When it gets to the peak and starts to come down just a little bit, you can say it's getting better. It's going away.
You're almost
there. That to me is what 3.5 means.
Yeah.
It's like a people in suffering. And so in Revelation, in Daniel, we have people who are experiencing suffering.
Right.
Okay, in Revelation, it's Rome. In Daniel, it's Greeks in the Seleucid Empire. So they're suffering. And what they want to know is, how much longer?
Yeah. And I think we do that today. I mean, just things going on in the world, you're like, man, how much longer can we take this?
How much worse can it get, right? And so the idea is that when it gets to the worst, you say, okay, hang on. You've gotten halfway. You're almost there. Stick with it.
Yeah.
And so that's the message, I think, in Revelation. It's simply this: hang on. Like, you've been through the worst. There's still more coming, but you're almost there. Don't give in now. You're past the halfway point. And that's the encouragement. That's the encouragement of Revelation. That's the encouragement of Daniel. Hang on. Don't give in. Mm-hmm. And again, if you start looking for what 42 means or 1260 means and how it fits into the number of whatever in the Bible, you miss the beauty of what they're trying to say, that these books were written to the people that of their generation.
Right, who were suffering.
And it meant something to them. What did it mean to them? It meant hang on. Mm-hmm. And later in our lives, it can mean the same thing, because your suffering might not be from an empire. Mm-hmm. It might not be from a government or a ruler. It might be from illness or something like that, or family troubles, mm-hmm. or a broken relationship. And there's a sense of like, you've got to trust me, God says. You've got to hang on. You've got to put this in my hands and come to me and seek my wisdom on how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea of the book, is whatever the suffering is, hang on till the end. Mm-hmm. Okay, one last one. We debated talking about this, but I thought it'd be, to be kind of complete. Yes, numbers are used to count. Mm-hmm. In Hebrew, we use the numbers to actually count. So Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Daleth, 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing. And then, so they would sometimes have, assign numbers to letters. So that's how you would count.
Well, and we do that with our alphabet too. A is 1, B is 2.
Yeah, we kind of do that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So in Hebrew, there's this kind of a way of doing things. So like N would be 50, the letter N, noon. So when we get to Revelation, we get to this number, and it says it's the number of the beast, 666. Mm-hmm. And of course, everybody's assigning that to something. Mm-hmm. It's Satan. I remember back in the 80s, it was Ronald Wilson Reagan, 666. There's all these kind of crazy ideas of what this number means. Well, two things. Number one, whoever this was called Therion, or the beast. The other thing is, I think they knew who it was. Mm-hmm. I think they knew who they were talking about. And so again, if we assign letters to numbers, there is an emperor of Rome who was particularly evil to Christians especially, and it caused them to suffer. Probably when the book was written, or at least part of it was written, and that is Nero Caesar. Nero Caesar's name in Greek is Neron, mm-hmm. which is what Revelation was written in, Greek. So his name would have appeared as Neron. If you added the letters to his name, you get 666. Mm-hmm. Now here's the clever trick here. When the Bible was translated into Latin, mm-hmm. they changed the number to 616. They removed 50 points, if you will, came off the number. Why? Because Nero in Latin is Nero, not Neron. So the noon comes off.
The N,
which
is noon.
yeah. The 50 comes off, and you go from 666 to 616.
So the people translating it knew.
They knew who it was.
That was.
And they changed the number to reflect that.
Right.
So as early as the Latin Vulgate, they knew who they were talking about, so they make sure the number fits the name, mm-hmm. if you will. So it wasn't meant to be like some future code for whoever, because there are going to be many anti-Christ people.
Yeah, people
in
who
the
are
world.
against Christ. There's lots of them around.
Lots of them around. And by the way, Nero was also called the Beast, too. Mm-hmm. So I mean, mm-hmm. they knew who they're talking about. They're talking about their particular time of suffering. And by the way, that suffering will recycle itself through generations in different situations, different people groups, things like that. Mm-hmm. So here again is an example where they knew who it was. they knew who they were talking about, and the translations kind of bear that out. So, bottom line, when it comes to numbers in the Bible, look for why they matter. Like, what are they trying to teach me? What are they connecting to? What stories are they bringing in? Are there any beautiful connections, like you said, Stacy, between the feeding of the 5,000, feeding of the 4,000? Jesus is the new Moses. Those kind of like layers of understanding that can come from the Bible that are really helpful, that they left these beautiful markers for us.
Yeah, and I do love that about the Bible. And it's something that has become more obvious to me as the more you study the Bible, the more you learn, and it just continues to open up new ideas.
Yeah, it's not really a handbook of God knowledge. Like, here's if I got to learn about the Bible and this kind of, very rote to kind of get the information. It's like, no, it's like this beautiful artistic painting. It's giving to us that allows us to engage with it and not just like read the words off the page, but like look at how they're trying to tie things together and weave a beautiful story for us.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of the reasons that Frank put together the Trail, which is basically a Bible reading program in a year, if you want to do it in a year or however long. But we have books that go with it. But online, we give you what to read that day, and then he does a little podcast that gives an explanation of some of the text. So if you're looking to get a little deeper into the Bible, it's a great resource. So check that out.
Yeah. And we are looking at possibly in the next year making a New Testament version of the Trail, where it's kind of focused on just the New Testament. So if, for example, for you that the whole Bible is a bit much to start off with, you just do the New Testament. So that's hopefully in the works, that we're working on.
Right, but also the Trail itself, you can choose just to do the New Testament. That's in there as well.
Very true. Absolutely. That's it.
Next?
We're done.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you found it as interesting as we do with numbers. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can, on our website, purpose-press.com, there's a place there that you can ask questions and that sort of thing, and we'd love to answer those questions on here.
Absolutely.
And if you would please like and subscribe and actually tell people about what we're doing. We're not really good about telling people, so it's helpful if you do.
Yep. Thank you again for being with us, and until next time, stay on the trail.